Hello students, welcome to the fourth session for 10th standard science. Well, up till now we have discussed very well about the nutrition, the human digestive system and the respiration in case of the humans. Well, today our main focus of attention is on the transportation. How the various materials are transported in case of human beings as well as in case of other living organisms also. So, for the purpose of transportation, there are two basic fluids in our body. The first one is blood and the second is the lymph. Let us focus on the first one, blood. What is blood? Blood is a red colored living liquid connective tissue. So these are the three major characteristics of the blood. Now blood basically consists of two major things. Blood plasma having large amount of water and blood cells. These blood cells include three basic types: red blood cells, white blood cells and the platelets. Now let us see the functions of all three of them. Red blood cells. These red blood cells, they are mainly responsible for the transport of various gases like the O2 and the CO2. The second one, that is the WBCs, white blood cells. They are said to be the soldiers of the body. So whenever there is any sort of infection or inflammation, our body is mainly protected by the soldiers, that is the WBCs. And the third one, the blood platelets. They are the main ones who protect us from various sorts of blood oozing out. That is in case of the blood clots. So we might have observed that when we have any sort of injury, whenever we get a cut on the surface of the skin, the blood basically oozes outside. But that blood does not ooze out for a very long period of time. It stops on its own. And that mainly takes place by the blood platelets. Now, how this blood is mainly pumped to the various regions of our body? It is mainly pumped by a pumping organ. And that pumping organ is nothing but the human heart. So let us describe and discuss the structure of a human heart. Here is a pictorial representation of a typical human heart. Now human heart is mainly conical in shape and it is the size of a closed fist. This is a closed fist. So this is the size of a human heart. It mainly consists of four basic chambers. Now why do we humans have four chambers? So that the mixing of the blood does not take place. Furthermore, the upper two chambers are known as the atria or the auricles, while the lower two chambers are known as the ventricles. In case of the upper two chambers, that is the auricles, one is the right auricle and the other is the left auricle. Likewise, in case of the ventricles, one is the right ventricle and the other is the left ventricle. Furthermore, all these four chambers, they are mainly separated by means of some sort of partition, and that partition is known as the septa. Moving on further, at the junction of the right auricle and the right ventricle, there is a tricuspid valve. And exactly in a similar way, at the junction of the left auricle and the left ventricle, there is a bicuspid valve. Now tricuspid and bicuspid, here cuspid means the openings. So tricuspid has three openings and bicuspid has two openings. Now what are the functions of these valves? These valves do not allow the backward flow of the blood. Means once the blood has come from the auricles to the ventricles, it will not be going back from the ventricles to the auricles again. So that is the typical structure of the human heart. Now, let us discuss how the purification of the blood ultimately takes place. So here is a pictorial representation for the purification of the heart. It mainly starts with the impure blood, that is the deoxygenated blood. So this deoxygenated blood, that is the blood not having the oxygen, it will be entering into the right auricle by superior and inferior vena cava. And simultaneously, the pure blood from the lungs after purification, it will be entering into the left auricle by means of the pulmonary vein. So now the auricles are full of blood. So they will contract, the valves will open, and so the blood will come from the right auricle to the right ventricle and the left auricle to the left ventricle. Now the ventricles are full of blood. So they will contract, and so from the right ventricle, the impure blood will be going into the lungs for purification by the pulmonary artery. And simultaneously, the pure blood from the left ventricle, it will be going to the entire body by means of the dorsal aorta. Furthermore, this pumping of the blood and the purification of the blood to reach the blood to different cells of the body, that mainly takes place by means of the blood vessels. And we humans have three basic blood vessels. They are the arteries, veins, and the blood capillaries. Now these arteries, when they go into a particular tissue, they divide to form blood capillaries. And these blood capillaries, they provide the nourishment to the tissue, and the harmful substances along with the CO2 is being taken up, and these capillaries, they ultimately form the veins. So arteries divide to form the capillaries, and these capillaries, they unite together to form the veins. So let us see the differences between the arteries and the veins. So these are the various differences between the arteries and the veins in relation to their thickness, their wall, their elasticity, and how and where do they provide some sort of blood to various regions of the body. Like the blood and the blood circulatory system, we have one more fluid known as the lymph. Now lymph is slightly yellowish in nature, and it basically oozes out from the thin walls of the blood capillaries. This fluid, it accumulates the intercellular spaces, and it mainly collects some of the useful substances. That is, from the villi also it absorbs useful substances and it gives back to the blood circulation. One more major function it does, that is, it protects the body from various harmful substances also. Just as the blood has blood vessels, exactly in a similar way, the lymph also has lymphatic vessels, and these are spread out throughout the entire body. So, after doing the blood and the lymph circulatory system, let us move on to the transportation in case of the plants. How plants send their materials from one place to the other? Well, plants transport two major substances, water and the food substances. Now this water is mainly transported from the roots to the topmost leaves by means of the xylem, and the food substances prepared by the plants at the leaves, is transported to the roots and various other regions by means of the phloem. So let us discuss about the first one, that is the transportation of the plants, in plants I should say, by means of the xylem. Now water is being taken up from the roots, it will be reaching to the stem and then to the leaf. Now how it has been taken up, sir? Now at the surface of the leaves there are a lot of stomatas. Now these stomatas, they open, and ultimately by the process of transpiration water is lost. So the leaves, they demand water from the stem, and the stem ultimately demands water from the roots, and then these roots, by the suction pull, they take up water from the ground, and ultimately it is reaching to the target cells, that is the leaves. But along with the water, some amount of minerals are also being transported. So for this transportation, no energy is required by the plants, and the flow is always in one direction. So we use the word unidirectional. Uni means one, so only in one direction. Exactly in a similar way, in relation to the food substances, that is the food prepared by the plants at the time of photosynthesis, is transported from the leaves to the downward regions, as well as towards the side regions, as the other leaves and the branches are also there. So it is transported by means of the phloem and its various components. But here the energy is required, and the process by which it is transported is the osmosis. And here it flows in two directions. So instead of using the word unidirectional, we use the word bidirectional. And here the use of energy, that is the ATP, is mainly taking place. Furthermore, this movement of the food from one place to the other is known as the translocation. In case of the water, it is known as the transportation. So that's all about the transportation in case of the humans as well as in case of the plants. Well, in the next class we shall discuss about one more major life process, that is the excretion in case of humans and the plants also. Thank you very much.